Okay, Hare Krishna. Good evening. Welcome all of you. Today's session on the second topic, which is cross-cultural traces of the Vedic civilization. So today we'll be kind of continuing from the previous session. Okay, so we'll be discussing on the basics of the Aryan invasion theory, basics of Aryan migration theory. We'll be continuing from where we left because it's important to get those basics, and with that information, we'll be able to understand today's session better. Right. So, an overview of what we are going to see today is that we're going to see the introduction of AIT, AMT, which is Aryan invasion theory and Aryan migration theory. We'll be also checking about OIT, the possibilities of out of India theory, which means that India as the homeland of the Aryans, and the Aryans migrated to the rest of the world and spread their culture, and therefore we find traces. The third section will be the cross-cultural traces of Vedic civilization, which will be the third part. And the fourth part will be describing about, specifically, we'll be doing a case analysis of the Yavanas. Okay, most of you would have heard about the Yavanas, the Malaysia and the Yavanas. These are very famous. Generally, we think that Yavana is one religion and the Malaysia is another religion. It's not exactly that way. We'll also see that. Okay, and we will see the common threads, like there will be a common pattern among the various Indo-European legends, like Slavic culture, like the Greek culture, etc., etc. We'll see that in many cases there is a thread, a common thread, which you can see among a pattern. Like how a certain hero is born and he grows and then he does some activities and then he goes away. So these are all patterns which is similar from India till Europe, and how it is similar and why it is similar. We'll be analyzing those things as well. So this is the overview of today's session. Okay. So before we start, we'll also give a quick background of AIT and AMT, which is very important before we proceed. Okay, so what is AIT and AMT? As I told you before, right? So when you, if you have attended my session last week, you remember that Indian history starts with describing the Indus Valley civilization. They say that, oh, India has this ancient Indus Valley civilization, which is very ancient, and two main places among this Indus Valley civilization is Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, which are now in modern day Pakistan. And apart from these two sites, we have nearly 600 sites. People generally know Mohenjo-daro and Harappa only, but actually there are around 600 or more sites which are together called as the Indus Valley civilization, and what a traditionalist would call as the Sindhu Saraswati civilization, because many of these sites were along the banks of the Saraswati as well. So therefore, Sindhu Saraswati Sabhyata. So this is what it is about. And this is a civilization which has been existing from the 4th millennium BCE. Okay, and it declined gradually and disappeared by 1500 BC. So this is the background of the Aryan invasion theory and Aryan migration theory, and how it was formulated. We saw in the last class that in the 18th and 19th century, the British, with their policy of divide and conquer, because if India was one identity, you see, people used to live together. People of different religions and races and cultures, etc., used to live together. But India was divided, and it is interestingly, today is Independence Day. If you remember, India was divided based on religious lines, right? So the colonials were not satisfied with just dividing India in religious lines. They wanted to divide it further in the lines of caste, in the lines of race, etc. So that divide and conquer policy was used by the British, and the Aryan invasion theory is actually deriving from this divide and conquer policy. So they created this identity of Aryan race, and Aryan race invaded from outside India, and they came and attacked the Dravidians who were staying in the Indus Valley civilization. And some of them, they say they are Dravidians, and some of them, they say they are Dasyus. In any case, the residents of the Indus Valley civilization were not Aryans. That was a thing they were trying to preach. And they say that 1500 BCE is the year when the Indus Valley civilization was completely wiped out, in the sense that all the people who were residing there, they vacated the Indus Valley civilization, and they went to different parts of the world. So there they found that the Aryan invasion theory, did not have much ground, because they could not find much evidences for invasion per se. That one group of army, a large group of army coming in, invading a city like Mohenjo-daro, invading a city like Harappa, invading other cities, and mass graves and mass deathbeds being found. So they could not find this. So therefore, they formulated the new one, which is the AMT, Aryan migration theory. So Aryan migration theory pretty much works very similar to the Aryan invasion theory, but Aryan migration theory has one important difference, which is that they try to say that the Aryans did not invade, they just migrated. They are migrants from, like, immigrants. One country has immigrants. I mean, where a country has too many people, for instance, so they send people to abroad. Like, for example, many people from India go to US, many people go to Canada or to UK, Australia. So they go there for a job or studies. They are typically called as an immigrant, one who migrates. So Aryan migration theory also comes from that kind of migrating concept. The Aryans who were coming from outside, they thought that India has a better life because of the geographical advantage of fertile land and many other things. So they say Aryan migration theory. The Aryans migrated; they did not invade. So basically, in any case, the Aryan race was created by the British. Mainly, the conspirator was Max Muller, who created this identity of an Aryan race, who invaded from outside. And as I shown from the previous session, there were three important things, which they were used to, three important archaeological factors. One is the evidence of horse. They said India does not have horse before the 1500 BC, and India did not have chariots before 1500 BC, and India does not have spoked wheels before 1500 BC. Because Aryans came in 1500 BC and they brought all these three. Before that, India did not have either chariots, India did not have horses, and India did not have spoked wheels. And when I say India, I obviously mean the entire Indian subcontinent, not the divided, countries respectively. So basically, the Indian subcontinent did not have this because the Aryans came from outside and they brought this. So this is the Aryan invasion theory in short. So they said that, okay, the Aryans brought this and they attacked the people who were residing in the Indus Valley civilization and they destroyed it, or they came from outside and they merged with the people of the Indus Valley and they created newer and newer identities and races, etc. In any case, the Aryans are shown to be someone who does not belong to Indian subcontinent, and the Aryans do not have rights over the Indian subcontinent because anyway they are invaders. So this was used to justify the invasion. Like, the British had invaded India. Technically, if you say, they were invaders. So they wanted to justify their invasion into India. So they formulated this Aryan invasion theory, saying that, oh, anyway, your Hindu ancestors are invaders. So we are also invaders. So one invader, another invader. What's your problem? Let's live together. Let us rule you. There's not an issue. So, basically the Aryan invasion theory, from the directional point of view, it is west to east, that people in ancient times, specifically around 1500 BC, migrated from west to east and they entered into India. So this is what is being formulated. And this is the standard academic consensus even till today, that it is believed that Aryans are migrants and they do not have rights. I mean, they do not belong to India per se, the Indian subcontinent. They are either invaders or migrants. So the real residents are the those who are living in the Indus Valley civilization, who were the Dravidians or the Dasyus. So coming to the Indus Valley civilization, typically it should be called as the Sindhu Saraswati Sabhyata, Sindhu Saraswati civilization, because I showed in the last class that how in ancient civilizations people used to live on the banks of the rivers. And if you see, interestingly, the Saraswati river has dried up. There was a river called Saraswati in ancient times which had dried up. And many of the sites of Indus Valley civilization are along the banks of the dried up Saraswati river. So clearly it shows that, you see, people did not have the habit of going far away from the source of water, because you need water for your sustenance. So when the Saraswati dried, that was one strong motivating factor for them to vacate the Sindhu Saraswati Sabhyata. So this is one important thing which we showed during the last session. And Sindhu Saraswati Sabhyata was existing during the Mahabharata, which is undoubtedly a fact. And the inhabitants were the followers of the Vedic culture, the Aryans. They are not invaders. So period of the Indus Valley civilization, basically it's classified into three: early Harappan, mature Harappan, and the late Harappan. So this I explained in the previous session as well. So a photo here of the Indus Valley civilization. So basically, they said the Harappans are native to Indian subcontinent, and whereas Aryans are native to Central Asia. Harappans are civilized. They live in an urban life. They are peace loving, whereas the Aryans are uncivilized, nomadic, and war loving. Harappans, they say, are religious and have a culture, whereas the Aryans have a tribal culture. Okay, they are tribalistic nomads. So Harappans do not have horses, and Aryans do have horses. There is no spoked wheel for Harappans, and Aryans have spoked wheel chariots. Harappans had the Indus language and the Indus script. Aryans had the Proto-Indo-European because they do not want to accept Sanskrit. So they say it is Proto-Indo-European and the script is unknown. So this is the kind of thing which I discussed in the previous class, and I showed how these apparent differences are actually false. There's no such difference. Harappans and Aryans are one and the same. And I also discussed in the previous session the various homeland theories, the Anatolian homeland theory, Caucasus region, Kurgan homeland, Sogdiana, and Indian subcontinent, right? So now coming to today's session, I'm actually starting the session just now. Okay, so because unless we give a background of the previous session, we will not be able to properly understand the background of what is OIT. OIT is basically out of India theory. Okay, so that we will see today in today's session. So yeah, this is just one point I had to mention here, that in the previous session we discussed about the land of the seven rivers, that how the Vedic Aryans professed, the Vedic Aryans connected their history to the Sapta-Sindhu region, and the seven rivers had the seven goddesses, and seven goddesses were also represented in the Indus Valley sites. We have this famous seal where the Saptakanni or the Saptakanya or the Sapta Devis, they had their iconography represented in the seals. Okay, so we saw that in the previous session, and we also saw how the Parsis, the Zoroastrians, they said that one of their homelands is the Hapta Hindu, which is derived from Sapta Sindhu. So clearly the direction is from Indian subcontinent towards the west. So it has been east to west. So basically giving a strong case for the out of India theory. So we also showed how the gods here, the heroes here in India were shown as villains in the Parsi culture. The villains in the Indian Vedic culture were shown as heroes in the Parsi culture. So like how Indra is a god or Devata, and he has the position of Devata of Swarga, and in Indra in Parsi culture, Parsi language, Parsi lexicon, Indra is a demon, and Asura in Vedic terminologies is generally referred to a demon, whereas Ahura is Asura. Okay, Ahura is actually converted from Asura because they cannot pronounce Sa, so it becomes Ahura. So it's a godly, and so here who is a hero becomes a villain there. Here who is a villain becomes a hero in the Parsi culture. So we saw about the Yama. We had Yama, and they also had a similar concept of Yama, which is Yima. And the homeland of the Aryans, Vedic Aryans, was Sapta-Sindhu region. And the Parsis say that we had 16 homelands, and one of them was the Sapta-Sindhu region. In their language, they call it as the Hapta Hindu. And the Hapta Hindu eventually became Hindu. Okay, so Sapta Sindhu became Hapta Hindu, and Hapta Hindu became Hindu. So we find that the word Hindu is derived in this direction. And Saraswati, we see that Saraswati was also the Saraswati in India. Okay, when Saraswati, when the Vedic people went to different parts of the world, so they carried this name of Saraswati, and they named rivers in other parts of the world as Saraswati, but they cannot pronounce Sa, so they made it as Haratwati. And we saw many other evidences for the logical direction is that it is from India towards the west. So now for today's session, we'll be discussing about the evidences for OIT, out of India theory. So coming mainly to the point here, you see, if any of you is interested, if any of you is eager, this is a massive area of research, which will open up newer and newer answers with respect to anthropology, with respect to the movement of peoples, who started where and how. See, it's not one unidirectional. One culture doesn't derive from another culture in a sequential way. It derives from one direction, another culture influences, the third culture influences on top, and the same culture will again influence it in later periods of time. So it's basically multi layers of impact on a single civilization. So basically, what I'm trying to convey here is that every area, every region in this world, okay, typically every region in this world where humans used to live, they had their own gods and goddesses and their local worships. Like the Mayans had it, the Aztecs had it, the Incas had it, the Australians had their own worship system, etc. Before the white people came from Europe. And every area in its own way had its own civilization and culture. And what we typically know today as the paganism is generally used in a derogatory way in today's context, but it is not derogatory. Paganism is just the concept of worshipping multiple gods. And like they had their own temples, they had their own culture, they had their own worship methodology. So what I have discussed in this slide, my general area of research is focused towards Europe. I try to study a lot with respect to the European history and the European paganism. So what I've done in this slide is I have shown you what are the different pagan blocks, pagan groups, pagan cultures of ancient Europe. So first one is Albanian paganism. With respect to, of course, it's easy to understand, Albania. And second one is Baltic paganism, which is around, you could say, just before Russia, northeastern Europe, So that is the area of Baltic paganism. And Basque paganism is in this side on far west of Europe, near Spain and Portugal. So that is Basque paganism. And Celtic paganism is Celtic warriors. You would have heard, Celtic paganism. So it's around UK and northern France. Those regions were following this Celtic polytheism. And Etruscan paganism was followed in regions of Italy. And Finnic paganism was around Finland and countries around it. Germanic paganism, easy to understand, around Germany. Ancient Greek religion had their own gods and goddesses. Hungarian native faith, again, Hungary had its own native culture and native gods and goddesses. Minoan civil religion around Crete. Okay, it is also near Greece. And Mordvin religion around Volga in Russia. Norse mythology, it is not generally considered as North Germanic, which is on the north, like the Scandinavian countries. In those regions, the Norse mythology was followed. And religion in ancient Rome, that is in Italy again. And Sami shamanism around Norway. Scythian religion, which is the religion of the Vedic Shaka dynasty. And finally, the Slavic paganism, the Slavs in modern day Yugoslavia. So what we see interestingly is that now I could go really deeper into just just this topic. This topic is so massive, it's so vast, it's so huge. Just studying a few of these tribes, these few of these groups of people. Now, Rigved, 7th book, 18th chapter, 7th verse, explains about the Shiva people. Okay, and if you trace them, you will find that the Shivas are located. Of course, I can give you the reference. This is from Encyclopedia of Ancient Indian Geography by Subodh Kapoor. So he has explained each of this, these tribes and where they belong and what is their modern location, etc. So the Shiva people are actually from the Shibi. You would have heard about the Shibi Chakravarti. So Shibi and Shiva people are located in Punjab, and today their region is located at the Shorkot in northeast of Multan, Pakistan. And the Paktas are Pakhtuns. The Paktas are mentioned in Rigved. Pashtuns, okay, they are around Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province in Pakistan. The Pashwas are mentioned in the Rigved in this particular book, who are eventually known as the Persians of Iran. The Parthas are the Parthians of Iran, and the Kivas are the Khorasmians of Iran, and also other groups like the Chinas are mentioned in the Mahabharata, and like the Sinhala people are mentioned in the Mahabharata, and like that, so many of these groups of people in ancient times, they find their reference in the Mahabharata or the Vedas or the ancient Indian texts. So it is a very interesting topic. When you want to study the movement of people, we cannot miss the ancient Indian sources, because they give us valuable data with respect to the antiquity of a particular tribe, a particular group of people, where they belonged, how their culture was in the ancient times, etc., etc. So these are in the Dasaragya battle. I'll be speaking about the Dasaragya battle in the coming slide. So just keep it in mind, Dasaragya battle is a battle in which 10 kings, 10 groups of kings, Okay, 10 kings who are having 10 kingdoms, and they have their own dynasties. They fought against one Vedic king called Maharaj Sudas. Okay, and Sudas was a Bharatvamshi belonging to the Bharata dynasty. So that war is explained in detail in the Vedas. So we'll be seeing about that Dasaragya battle as well, and we'll be seeing in the upcoming slides as to what are the different periods in time when people have vacated India and gone to different parts of the world. So literature-wise, we have clear references where people have vacated, people have left India in different parts of time. I mean, different time periods. In different time periods, people have vacated India and gone to different parts of the world. So that aspect we will be discussing in the coming slide, which is shown here. So these are the 7 recorded points of emigration out of India. When you say immigration, you all know that immigration is when somebody comes inside, it's called immigration. When somebody goes outside, it's called emigration. So 7 recorded points of emigration out of India. So that's why it's called out of India theory. So one point of emigration is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the Parashuram's chasing of kings. Lord Parshuram, who is considered as an avatar of Bhagavan Vishnu. So Parshuram chased away several of the Kshatriyas, although he was born in a Brahmin family, and he chased away several of the Kshatriyas, and they went to different parts of the world, and they went there along with their groups of people, and they started their different cultures, traditions, etc. in different parts. So one reference for out of India moment is given in the Parshuram's chasing of kings in our Puranas. So another point of instance of quitting out of India is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 9, which is the attack of King Sagara. Maharaj Sagara again chases away several kings to different parts of the world. Same thing with Maharaj Bharata. Maharaj Bharata does the same thing, and he drives away several of these Kshatriyas and chases them to different parts of the world. And the fourth point in history, literary history, is the Dasaragya battle. It's a very, very extremely important point in history. Rigveda explains about, which I told you in the previous slide, Rigveda explains about the battle between the 10 kings, 10 dynasties against Maharaj Sudas. And out of these 10, 5 are mentioned here. The Shivas, the Bhaktas, the Parshvas, Parthas, and Kivas. They all, and another 5 more. So they all together fought against one king, Maharaj Sudas of the Bharata Vamsha, and Maharaj Sudas chased away all of them successfully so that is basically shooing them away to different parts of the world. So this is again an evidence of out of India, when people are, either they move by natural, either they move by their own will, or they are chased away. So the fifth point in history, which is important, is the battle between the 5 Vamshas, which I'm going to show in the upcoming slide, not in the previous slide. I'm going to show in the upcoming slide. So battle between the 5 ancient Vamshas. So Anu, Puru, Druhyu, Truvasu, Yadu. So how these 5 dynasties were placed, and how they fought with each other, and how they were sent to different parts of the world. We'll be seeing it in the upcoming slide. So okay. This is then the 6th point in history, which is the Mahabharata battle. The battle in which literally, Mahabharata mentions about 363 dynasties. Janapadas. Mahabharata mentions about 363 Janapadas who fought in the Mahabharata war. So out of these 363 Janapadas, around 80 of them approximately are having a continuous recorded history in Mahabharata, so much so that they are mentioned as fighting the Mahabharata war. Not all 363 are fighting, but around 80 or 80 to 90 of them are actually fighting in the Mahabharata war, which I have researched and I have mentioned in my works. So this is one area when these various groups of people fought, and then they were chased away, or when men were killed, so the cultures had to move far away, etc., etc. So Mahabharata battle was a big point in history where there was large scale movement of people. Right, so that is one point in history where people migrated away from Bharatvarsha. And Jarasandha is another important literary reference with respect to out of India movement, is mentioned in the Mahabharata, where Maharaj Jarasandha of Magadha dynasty, he kept attacking several kings, and therefore out of fear for Jarasandha, many of these kings migrated to different parts of the world. Some they went to South India, some they went to southwest India, some they went to northwest of India, and some went to west of India, etc. So that is one reason where both are in the same point of history. Mahabharata battle and Jarasandha attack are in the same point of history. And finally, the drying up of Saraswati River around 1900 BC, approximately during that time. What happens is the Saraswati River dries up due to various natural reasons. Saraswati changes path. The feeding of the river took a different course, and therefore the river dried up, and therefore the people vacated. There was no invasion. Nobody came and smashed the regions of Indus Valley civilization. They vacated because they had to vacate because they did not have the source of water. Right. So now coming to the point of 5 dynasties, which I mentioned in the previous slide. So Maharaj Yayati, as you can see in the slide here, he had 5 sons: Yadu, Turvasu, Druhyu, Anu, and Puru. Right. So what happened is these five kings and their descendants, they were located in these regions respectively. As you can see here, the Yadus were located in the region of Gujarat and northern Maharashtra, etc. This was Yadu region. This was always the Yadu region. The Anartha kingdom, the Yadus were always strong in that region. The Yadavas, that's the region. And the Purus were in the heartland. You can see here, this is the heartland of India, which is around Delhi, UP, Panchala. These are all and Kurukshetra. These are all the Puru region. Okay, so the Purus were located in this region. The Anus were located in around the Punjab region, and the Turvasus were located in the Bengal, Odisha region, and they were controlling the rest of South India. And the Druhyus were located in Gandhara region, okay, modern day Afghanistan. So the Druhyus had constant war with the various dynasties like the Anus, the Yadus, the Purus, and Turvasus, etc. So what the Shastras mention is that the Druhyus were chased away so far and far because they couldn't win much of those battles with the other 4 dynasties or the other 1 or 2 of those dynasties. So they were chased away far and far, so much so that they landed up in modern day UK, United Kingdom. As I shown you from the previous civilization, there is something called as the Celtic paganism, and a lot of Celtic paganism has to do with the Druhyus. The Druhyus who migrated from India in ancient times, they went to regions of Northern Europe, and there they eventually came to be known as the Druids. So this is not something which I am promoting. You can check the works of Shrikant Talagiri. It's available on Amazon. So he has done an in-depth research on how the Druhyus had to migrate, and Druhyus took the culture what they had in ancient times, and they introduced it to several parts of the world. Therefore, you can see that the Druhyus had worship of Lakshmi. They had the worship of Mithra. I'll explain in the coming slides. So these things were carried as far as Europe. So they had this Pashupati worship. They had the wealth goddesses, which is the Lakshmi, etc. So the point here is that the Druhyu, you can see even the name similarity, Druhyu, Druid. It's quite similar. So what we can see is that the movement of people is clearly from the Indian subcontinent to rest of the world. So one evidence which you can see here, this is not a Druhyu evidence. This is just a portrait of Lakshmi Devi. Lakshmi Devi is standing on, okay, I can just show it here. Lakshmi Devi is standing on a lotus, okay. Oh, sorry. Lakshmi Devi is standing on a lotus, and what we can see is that 2 elephants, okay, you can see here, 2 elephants are actually doing Abhisheka, with water Abhisheka to her, and Saraswati Devi is sitting next to her. Let's not think about Saraswati Devi for now, just concentrate on Lakshmi, how she is being worshipped by 2 elephants. Now the point here is that this kind of iconographical representation is not found in any other ancient civilization. You don't have any other civilization where you have a goddess who is being worshipped by elephants and she stands on a lotus stuff. It's typically either to, in some cases, to Saraswati, but mostly what I have seen is that this iconography representation connects to Lakshmi Devi only. And interestingly, this representation is connected, it's seen in the Druhyu civilization. When you see the Druhyus, the Druhyu area, which is even modern day Denmark, comes under the Druhyu Celtic area. The Druhyus and Celts were connected. again, now going inside that particular how Druhyus and Celts were connected, it's a vast topic. I'm just giving you an overview of it. So going into that in depth would be, again, it is a different seminar altogether, just giving you an indication that the Druhyus and their Celtic warriors, okay, they had this coin. Now, this coin is found from a region called Gunderstrup Cauldron, and Gunderstrup Cauldron is in modern day Denmark. Now you can see here there is the elephants who are doing Abhisheka, there is a goddess, and there is a lotus. So typical Lakshmi iconography. Now there is no other plausible explanation of this coin representing any other goddess. Okay, possibly if somebody has the counter explanation, I'll be interested to study that. Okay, now coming to other civilizations. Now, since this session is more about the cross-cultural traces, I'm just going to discuss the traces. I'm not going to go in depth of any culture because that again is going to take a lot of time. Now, this is in modern day Turkey in a place called Bogaskoy. Now, in Bogaskoy, we have this tablet. We have today we have the Android tablets. A tablet is specifically like mostly in a rectangular shape, and it has you can inscribe something on it. So typically a tablet is in a rectangular shape, and you have inscriptions. So what you find here is an ancient tablet belonging to 1350 BC, which is around 3,400 years back. So this inscription is what is written here. It is a treaty. It is a treaty between Hittite king, if I'm pronouncing it right, Suppiluliuma, and Mitanni king Shativaza. So they are doing a treaty. Okay, it is basically, if I remember right, is a land treaty. So in that land treaty, they are invoking gods, right? And they're invoking 4 gods: Indra, Mithra, Varuna, and Nasatya. Interestingly, in Rig Veda, right? In Rig Veda, Mithra and Varuna are always spoken together. Now I'll come to in the upcoming slides who is Mithra and what is his identity, and how Mithra worship was literally carried to different parts of the world through the various pagan cultures. Many of these pagan cultures had Mithra, they had Indra. We'll see that in upcoming slides. So this tablet belonging to Turkey is a very interesting and also an important evidence as to how the Vedic culture was followed as far as in Bogaskoy, where the Hittites and the Mitannis also respected and kept the Vedic gods as divine witnesses. Okay, then we have the Hittites who also had Indra, right? The Hittite god was Inar. Indra was basically Inar. So Indra, what he does is he controls the dragon. Now, most of you might be knowing about the story of the Indra and Vritsasur. Vritsasur is generally represented as a large dragon or large snake kind of iconography. So Indra tames Vritsasura. This is a very a common legend, which you see. The concept is that the god or the devata or the divine being, he controls the dragon or the serpent. So this iconography is found not only in the Bhagavatam or in the Vedas, because the Vritsasura Indra story is found literally everywhere, in the Puranas also, in the Vedas also. So this concept is also represented by Inar. Inar is actually a corruption of Indra, and Inar is a god in the Hittite culture. Okay, in modern day Eastern Europe and Western Asia, they had this Hittite culture. So the Inar actually is the corruption of Indra, and he also had this dragon taming legend. So the dragon taming legend is very common in several of these pagan cultures, where the devata will control and tame, or in some cases even kill the dragon. So, and also in the same region, in West Asia, we find this Nevali region called Nevali Kori, and in Nevali Kori we find this Brahmin statue. There is no evidence whatsoever that people are following today Brahmin culture there, but we find this statue where we have this shikha. The Brahmins have their shikha on the back, and the shikha is basically, if I remember correctly, it is an adherence to Vedic culture, accepting Vedas as ultimate authority, and accepting their connection with the Vedic culture, etc. So the Sikha has been found a statue with Sikha has been found in Nevali Kori, which is a very important and interesting evidence that Aryans did take their culture as far as West Asia and Europe. So another very important evidence and interesting as well is the Mithraism. Now, what is Mithra and who is Mithra? I've spoken a lot about Mithra in the previous slides. So you'll be wondering who this Mithra is and what he does and etc. etc. Basically, Mithra is one of the names of Surya Dev, Lord Surya, Surya Bhagwan. So Surya Bhagwan, actually, if you see, the iconography of Surya Dev is very common in many of these ancient civilizations. Everybody were worshippers of sun. S-U-N, sun. Okay, so Surya worship was very common. Now we'll be wondering like how it was common and how it was carried. It was carried not in the name of Surya, it was carried in the name of Mithra. Now, Mithra is actually one of the names of Surya Dev. I'll explain it why. See, Mithra is basically, if you can say, it is a friend or a Sakha, Mithra. These are all common understandings. So Mithra is a friend. So Surya is a friend. He's friend is not exactly the correct translation of the word Mithra, but just to make you understand, Mithra is a dear friend, probably. So why the Surya is called as a friend? Because without Surya, without sunlight, you will not have life on this planet. You will not have crops growing. You will not have various seasons on coming on track. Surya is the backbone of civilization, literally. So Surya is required, and of course, rain is required. So Varuna, thunder, lightning, etc. Indra and Parjanya. So basically, Surya was the primary important god, Devata. So we find that the Mithra worship is literally there in almost in every continent in this planet. So that's why we find that something called the Mithraism. So in ancient Greek culture, we had the god of light called as Helios. Okay, god of light is associated with the Greek Helios. So in the Rig Veda, Mithra always appears primarily in the Dvandva compound with Mithra and Varuna together referred, right? And not only in India, as I said before, from here till Spain, in various of these Indo-European pagan cultures, we find Mithra. So we have also the Greek Helios, and he also, as you may know, Surya travels on a chariot. Okay, and the chariot has several horses, and Surya has his driver who runs the chariot. In some cases, he drives it himself. So in any case, this iconography representation of Surya, chariot and horses and running on the sun planet, this representation is found even in the Greek culture. The Greeks call it as Helios. Okay, Helio is actually from the solar word, and solar word was derived from Surya. Okay, so very interestingly, we find that the Mithra, the Surya worship was as far as modern day London. Now, if you like, you can Google it up, London Mithraeum. Okay, so what this is an ancient Roman temple. The Romans had also Mithra worship. So you can see the reviews is tremendous. See 1,500 reviews. It's a place of great importance. And also you can see very interestingly, it is along the banks of a river. Okay, so again, a thing which I always propose is that when you want to do archaeological excavations, it should be along the banks of a river, because that's the place where you have maximum chances of finding something. Okay, so the London Mithra temple, this was very interesting, the way they found it. What happened is that during the World War II, London was heavily being bombed by the inimical forces like Germany. I don't exactly remember which country bombed it in this place, but one of these inimical countries, probably Germany, Japan, or probably any other country. So when these inimical forces bombed London, okay, what happened is below the rubbles of a building, they found when the war was over and they had to reconstruct sites which were damaged. So when they were reconstructing a particular damaged building, so they had to do a little digging up. So they find that there was an ancient structure below. So when they dig deeper, they found that there is an ancient Roman temple. The Romans had constructed a Mithra temple there, which is at least 1,900 or even maybe 2,000 years old. So the Mithra worship of Lord Surya Dev, Bhagwan Surya Dev, was as far as modern day London. Now again, you would like to know like how the Mithra worship was carried from India. You see, the Iranians, the Parsi Zoroastrians also had Mithra. The Greeks had Mithra, Helios. Okay, they had Helios, and Romans had the Mithra worship. So the Mithra, this is again a great area of research, the Mithraism, the Mithras, how they started, and how the Mithra worship started and how it went to different parts of the world is again a great area of research. So now coming to another important groups of people called as the Yavanas. Yavana, sometimes referred as Yavana and sometimes referred as the Yavana. In any case, generally referring to Europeans, okay, and sometimes it is referred to West Asians as well, but generally it is referred to Europeans. So who are these Yavana? Yavana, see, if you want to understand the meaning of the word Yavana, it's someone who tries to be away. He tries to remove himself, who tries to keep off from the general mass of people, you know. So, so the Yavana had migrated, basically they belong to the Vedic culture, belonging to the Vedic India, and they moved far away to different parts of the world. So Yavana means a foreigner, a barbarian who is not part of the Varnas. Generally, the Greeks are called as the Yavanas, but you'll have to understand that not all Yavanas are Greeks. Okay, Yavana is a superset, Greek is a subset. Many groups of people were called as Yavanas. So Greeks are Yavanas, but not all Yavanas are Greeks. I hope you understood the point, right? All men are humans, but all humans are not men because there are also women and transgender. So they are also humans. So basically, humans are superset, men, women, transgender, they are subsets. So similarly, the Yavana is a superset, and the Greeks, those who are followers of the Greek culture, they are one branch of the Yavanas. Okay, so that is one important thing which we need to understand. And the Yavanas were actually present from the region of modern day Bactria, which is North Afghanistan and south of Uzbekistan, those regions. That was known as the ancient Bactria region, not bacteria, Bactria. So Bactria region, and till Ionia. Ionia is a town in modern day Turkey, which is still there. Okay, so these are all, in different times of in different times in history. The understanding of the Yavana region changed. Sometimes it was near Bactria, sometimes it was as far as Greece. So in most cases, they were applied to regions of West Asia, Arabia, etc. They were fixed as Yavana region, but it is not fixed because the Yavanas were constantly migrating. So it's difficult to say that this region alone was Yavana. It's very difficult to say like that. Okay, so now the point here is that, so in some cases, Yavanas were used as referring to foreigners, and sometimes it was used as a derogatory term as well, like you are like a Yavana, you don't have any culture, you don't want to be civilized, etc. So it is even in modern context, many times the word Yavana is used in a derogatory way. So we have to see the background of how it all started, who were the Yavanas, what is their role in the Mahabharata war, etc., etc. We will see it now. So who were the Yavanas? The Mahabharata, very interestingly, Drona's Vyuha. So Vyuha means a structure. Vyuha means a formation. Arrangement. Like in the war, what happened is in the Mahabharata war, there were different Vyuhas. Okay, one is a Garuda Vyuha, Krauncha Vyuha, Shakata Vyuha, Chakra Vyuha. Vyuha is basically the formation of the army, the flanks, how they were arranged, etc. So the Yavanas are described in the Mahabharata as being part of the Dronacharya's Vyuha. In one case, they are described as a Janapada. I explained the previous class what is a Janapada. Janapada is Jana are people and Pada are their feet. So when a group of people are occupying a particular land, it is called as a Janapada, and they are also described as a Jati, as a caste. According to Mahabharata Vanaparva, they predict the future, saying that the world will be filled with Yavanas and other natures in the future, right? And sometimes the Yavanas are classified among the peoples of North India, Uttarapatha, like Kamboja, Gandhara, Kirata, Barbara, etc. So now here, a scientist by the name Jijit Nadumari Ravi, it is his research, hard work, excellent hard work with respect to tracking the movement of Nakula, Sahadeva. So basically the background is Maharaj Yudhishthira, he sent 4 brothers to 4 directions. He sent Arjun to the north. Okay, he sends Arjun to the north for conquering, and he sends Sahadeva to the south. He sends Bhima to the east, and here, as you can see in this picture, he sends Nakula to the west. And this is the path taken by Nakula. You can see here, and he goes to the Shivi, which I explained here in the class. Shivi region, Kekaya, Darshana, Gandhara, Dasarna, Gandhara, and finally he lands into Yavana region. And now you see this Yavana is based on today's mapping. It could be north of Pakistan or south of Afghanistan. So the Yavanas were located during Mahabharata times in modern day South Afghanistan or North Pakistan. So the Yavanas, so basically Nakula went as far as that region, and his trip in conquering the various kings ends in the Yavana region, and then he takes a back turn and he comes back to Indraprastha, and Indraprastha is shown here. Indraprastha is modern day Delhi. So this is the pathway taken by Nakula, and his Digvijay trip, we call this as the Rajasuya Digvijay trip, it ends with the Yavana region. So who were these Yavanas? So Puranas speak about the Agni Puran chapter 118, verse number 1 to 5 speaks of Bharata in the central path, Kiratas in the east, and Yavanas in the west. Again, Yavanas are placed in the west of India. Okay, the Bharata is in the central and the Yavanas are placed in the west. Vayu Puran again does the same thing. It places Yavanas in the west. Puranas refer to the Yavanas as a branch of Maharaj Turvasu, the king who was ruling in Bengal, Odisha region. Sometimes it is referred that branch of that king went to the west and etc. So therefore the Yavanas started. And one very interesting story of the Yavanas is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Kala Yavana. Kala Yavana is a king who came from Yavana region. It's not exactly described from where he came. So Kala Yavana came from outside and he attacked Mathura, the Yadavas. So Krishna gave him a befitting reply, and finally he was killed by Muchukunda, who was sleeping in a cave. So we all may know this famous story. So again, Kala Yavana, who attacked Krishna in Mathura, was again a Yavana. Okay, so these are all very interesting and important historical markers showing how the Yavanas were connected with the point here is today's session I'll be giving some bit of a depth with the Yavanas, because other cultures, again, each one of them is too vast and deep to understand. So again, going further into the Yavanas, so the Yavanas gradually came to be known as Yauna. Okay, because what happens in the Zoroastrian language is that the sa becomes silent and some longer words become shortened, etc. So it is most probably that the Yavana became Yauna. Yauna became Iona, and even today we have this Iona, a place called Iona in Greece. If I remember, it is in Turkey. So so the word Yavana has become Yauna. It's not that it was Yauna and became Yavana. So as I told you before, all Greeks are Yavanas, but all Yavanas are not Greeks, because superset, subset. And the Arabs, Turks, Persians were also known as Yunan. Okay, Yunan is again very connected with the word Yavana. So we have this Unani medicine, which is very famous. All of you might be knowing that the Unani medicine is one branch of medicine which is natural medicine type, like the Ayurvedic medicine, like the Siddha medicine. Unani is one medicinal way which has good medicinal values. So the Arabs, Turks, and the Persians were sometimes together known as the Yunan people. So Unani is their medicinal system. So who were these Yavanas? If you want to go deeper, you will see in the Tamil Sangam literatures, Mullai Part 2, 74, 75, it speaks of the Yavanas from the west. Again, the Yavanas are located to the west. Brihat Samhita of Varaha Mihira also mentions that in this particular verse, it mentions that the northwest region, when they say northwest, it is northwest of India, refers that the northwest region is inhabited by the Mlecha and Yavana. So it says the Mlecha hi Yavana. So many times what happens is the Mlecha and Yavana are combinedly referred to as one identity. we generally think that Mlechas are one group of people, Yavanas are one group. Not necessarily. Sometimes a certain group of people was together known as Mlecha and Yavana. So basically in different periods of time the understanding was different. That's one thing which we have to understand. History is not monotonous. It has to be understood from multiple perspectives. So Panini in his book also refers to Yavanani, the feminine form of Yavana. So Panini mentions Yavanas along with Shaka. Now interestingly, the Shakas and the Yavanas both are located to the west of India. Okay, so Shaka Yavanam. So again shows that geographical proximity of the Shakas and Yavanas. Manu in Manu Samhita 10.43, again he speaks of the Yavanas along with Kamboja, Shaka and Pahlavis. These are all to the west of India. So again, it's an indicator that they are geographically near to each other, right? So more references for the Yavanas. Gautama in Gautama Dharma Shastra 4.21. It is said that the Yavanas are most esteemed of the foreigners. They were highly respected. And the Katyayana says that Yavanani is the script of the Yavanas. Manu, in his book, again, I said this, Patanjali, Manusmriti, also they refer to the Shakas along with the Yavanas. Again, an indicator that this is geographical proximity. The Shaka, Yavana, these are all geographically near to each other, right? The Buddhists also have spoken of the Yavanas. Okay, so yeah, see, many of you are asking whether you will get the recordings. Definitely, recording will be available in the YouTube channel, Institute of Science and Spirituality. Please do not worry about the recordings. It will be available. You can peacefully watch it. Now, please focus on the class, okay? Because when the message box pops up, every time we have to open it and see. So it kind of diverts the attention of people. So please focus on the class. You will get the recordings in the channel. Thank you. Okay, so the Buddhist Yavanas. The Buddhist also speaks of the Yavanas. The Milinda Panha, which is the a dialogue between Menender, King Menender, who was a Greek king who converted to Buddhism. Even he speaks of the Yavanas. Okay, so Milinda Panha, it refers to the land of the Yonas as a place fit for the attainment of Nirvana. Nirvana, you might be knowing, Nirvana is the ultimate destination for the Buddhist. So Yona, the land of the Yona, is probably to the west, probably West Asia or Eastern Europe. That was a land of the Greeks, the land of the Yona, Yavana, etc. So basically, this Milinda Panha is indicating that land, because the Greeks who converted to Buddhism in certain period of time, so they are indirectly saying that the Greek land is best for attaining Nirvana because the kings are very favorable, or maybe the culture is very favorable, right? So that's a very interesting historical marker again. The Mahavastu, volume 1, page 171, speaks of the assembly of Yona, again Yavana, where anything which was decided upon was binded upon them, which means that if in the Yavana assembly, if anything is decided, if they have come together and made a decision, they will stand to it. They will not change it. So again, we have inscriptional evidence. Okay, I am going to reach the time limit here. So I'll just ask from the host, how much time do I have more, so that I can either speed up or...
I think you can go ahead, maybe for 15 more minutes.
Exactly. Hello?
Yeah, I think 15 minutes should be okay.
15 minutes, okay? Okay, fine. So now we have evidence also for the Yavanas. So this is a famous inscription in modern day Iran, which is Nakshe Rostam inscription of King Darius. King Darius was ruling the Yavana region, which was known as Yona during that times. So we also have the numismatic evidences. Numismatics means coins, coin evidences, which also speaks of the Yavanas as Yauna or Yona, etc. So what is this Nakshe Rostam inscription? In this Nakshe Rostam inscription, he was basically a Parsi, Zoroastrian follower. So he says, by the favor of Ahura Mazda, as I told you, Ahura is derived from Asura. So by the favor of Asura Mazda, Asura is their god. Okay, Asura is taken in a derogatory way, or in a negative way, or in a villainous way in the Vedic India. But in the Parsi terminologies, Ahura is used for their god. Okay, so by the favor of Ahura Mazda, these are the countries which I seized outside of Persia. Outside of Persia, King Darius says, I ruled over them, they bore tribute to me, they did what was said to them by me, they held by law firmly, and these are the various countries: Bactria, Sogdia, Chorasmia, etc., etc., etc. And he also speaks of the Homa drinking Scythians, Babylonia, and he speaks of the Yavana. Okay, the Yavana, and then he speaks of the Shaka. So basically, the Yavanas were also controlled by the Zoroastrian Parsi king from Iran, modern day Iran. So we have further evidences of the Yavanas being one branch of Yavanas or one group of Yavanas, or certain Yavanas were becoming devotees of Lord Krishna, Lord Vishnu. So this is an evidence from the 2nd century BC. This is called as the Heliodorus column. This Garuda pillar. So the context is like this. Okay, I'll read through the translations. You will basically understand most of it, but I'll also try to explain it a bit more after I explain. So what is written in this pillar? So you see, there was basically a temple constructed for Lord Vasudeva, Bhagavan Vasudeva, and in front of the temple we have the Garuda Stamba. Okay, because in every temple we have this culture of constructing a stamba. So, so Heliodorus actually is a Greek traveler who came from outside, and he actually constructed, because he was a devout follower of Vaishnavism and he was a devotee of Lord Bhagavan Vasudeva. So he constructed a temple, and in front of the temple he had this pillar, and in this pillar they had this inscription, okay, written on it, and the inscription had this writing. It says, "This Garuda pillar erected for Vasudeva, the master of the Devatas, was erected here by the Bhagavata Heliodorus, the son of Dion, who is a man of Takshila, sent by the great Yona king Antialkidas." Okay, Yona king Antialkidas. Okay, he sent Heliodorus. Heliodorus is the son of Dion, and he sent as an ambassador to King Kashiputra Bhagabhadra. Kashiputra Bhagabhadra, most probably a king of Kashi. So the savior son of the princess from Varanasi, right? So basically he is sent as a messenger. On the way, right? On the way, he constructs a temple for Bhagavan Vasudeva. So this is a Yona. See, clearly he's saying that I am sent by a Yona king Antialkidas, and he himself agrees that he is belonging to that dynasty. So basically, I mean, he's under the king of under the Yona king. So Heliodorus is a Greek typically, and he is a devotee of Lord Vasudeva. So we have more sources to confirm Greek connections with Bharata. So this is from the 3rd century BC. The original book is lost, but very interestingly, it is referred that the book called Indica. See, the background is like this. In 3rd century BC, there is a traveler by the name of Megasthenes. He comes to India, and he comes to India. He stays in the court of a king called Sandrakotas, which is the Greek version of Sanskrit Chandragupta. Okay, he stays in the court of Sandrakotas, and what he does is he writes about India. Okay, the word India actually came from Indica. He wrote about India as Indica. So Indica became India in later period of time. So the word India has its origin from Indica, because the first usage of the word India is found in around 2000 years old Greek literatures, right? So that's the name which the Greeks, the British, when they came to India, they took the same name and kept to our country. So right, coming to the point, Indica is the book which is about India, which was written by Megasthenes. So he writes this book in Ionian dialect. Ionian script. So there is a Iona script, and he stays in the court of Sandrakotas, and he gives a very interesting reference. He says there are several things which he has written, but he very interestingly says one point, which is, he says there is a personality called Heracles. Okay, Heracles is again a Greek god. Okay, a Greek god called Heracles. See, Heracles is a god in the Greeks. But he says Heracles is being worshipped in a place called Mithra. Mithra. So doesn't it look similar to Mathura? See, modern day Mathura. And Mithra, and the river. There is a river along the Mithra, which is Jobares, which is most likely Jamuna. And there is another city called Klesbora, which is probably Krishnapura, and nobody has identified it yet. Maybe it's Vrindavan. A wild speculation. But definitely Mithra is Mathura, Jobares is Jamuna, and Saurasenoi. He says that the Saurasenoi people are worshipping Heracles in a place called Mithra, and a river by the name of Jobares is flowing. Now, very interestingly, right, Saurasenoi is a Surasena people. And Krishna's Vamsha is the Surasena Vamsha. So Surasena people will obviously worship Krishna. So who is Heracles, right? So Heracles is actually a Greek god. I mean, a Greek god also had the name called Heracles. And when the Greeks came to India, they saw a god in India who was very similar to Heracles. Heracles was a cowherd, and the Indian god was also a cowherd. I'll show you in the coming slides how many similarities Heracles and Krishna have. So many similarities that when Megasthenes came, he felt that this is actually Krishna. Now, I'm not saying that Heracles is Krishna, but Heracles has had too many similarities with Krishna that, he said in Mithra, in Jobares, in Mithra, along the banks of river Jobares, worship of Sorosenoi people of a god called Heracles, right? So we will see more evidences as to how this is a fact. Okay, you can find that there are many similarities. He says that today's Sandrakotas, the king who is ruling currently, Sandrakotas, is 138th king in the line from Heracles. Now, Heracles is a Greek god. He will be in Greece. What he has to do with India? So basically, he is giving an indirect chronological tradition, right, from Heracles to Sandrakotas, Heracles to Chandragupta. So, that again, this is many technical details which I will not go into today. So basically, many scholars have agreed that Heracles has traits from Krishna. Heracles has some traits of Balram as well, and some other gods, and also the local Greek tradition had their own version of Heracles. So Heracles eventually became today what we know today as the Hercules. You all might be knowing about the Hercules tires, which was very famous during one point of time in India. Very gigantic, strong personality, lifting big things. This Hercules is actually from Heracles, the strongman narrative. He's a strong man, and he does exceptional activities. So James Todd, in his famous book Annals and Antiquities of Rajasthan, he says that how invaluable such remnants of ancient race of Harikula. So basically, you can read through it. Reading through it will take more time. I'm just trying to say here is that he also agreed that the similarities between Krishna and Heracles are too similar to be ignored. Right? Heracles has his own identity, has his own culture, etc., and Krishna has his own identity, culture, etc. And they both of them had too many similarities. So much so that Heracles felt that this is Krishna. Right, so he gave this conjecture. He said that Heracles could be from Hari Kul Ish. Hari, who is the Kula Isha of Saurasenoi people, right? He is worshipped in a place called Mithra along the banks of river Jobares. Okay, so that's one thing. And apart from it, the Heracles controls the dragon. This is again the dragon taming legend is also found in Heracles and also in Krishna. Like in the case of Krishna, we find that he controls the Kaliya Nag, and Heracles controls the snake. Right, so it's very similar things which we found in both stories. And there are other Greek writers. I have given the references in the last slide, so you can go through it, like Curtius, Dion, Ptolemy, etc. They have also given several evidences for worship of Krishna and how the Greek cultures and the Indian culture came together, and they had the exchange of ideas, exchange of civilization, exchange of identity, exchange of philosophies, etc. We find that in several instances. Again, this is a vast topic which I cannot cover in this session. So Curtius says, is another Greek author. He says that during the war with Alexander, you might be knowing that Alexander came to India and he fought with the Indian king called Porus. Okay, and during this war, he had fought with Porus, carried the portrait Greeks saw Krishna had too many similarities with Heracles, so they used the term Heracles. Right, so Porus is also mentioned to be using temples, constructing temples, and he belonged to the Porurai dynasty. It's also mentioned, the Greek sources also mention of the Indrabara. Indrabara is Indraprastha. They also mention of a river called Yamuna. They mention of a group of people called Brahmanas. So Ptolemy in his book also speaks of the Autorochorus, the Uttarakuru people, right? And Stromates in his book, he speaks again of the Brahmanas. He calls them as Brahmana. Brahmana, he says they have all, I mean, he didn't use the word sattvic, I use it for your reference. So they are pure people, they have good habits, they are cultured, etc. They have austerity, and they don't eat wine, they don't have any bad habits, they believed in reincarnation, they worshipped Heracles, right? So the Brahmanas worshipped Heracles. So Dion in his book, Dion Chrysostom, he writes that Indians possessed an Iliad. Iliad is typically an epic of the Greeks. So he is trying to say that Indians had an epic of their own, which is 1 lakh verses. 100,000 verses. Now, when you combine Mahabharata and Harivamsha, there is the only book which will be 1 lakh verses, 100,000 verses. There is no other book which will be coming together. So basically, you can see that when you compare parallelism, this is from the famous book Krishna Cycle in the Puranas, all rights reserved to the author. So he actually gives a very interesting comparison between the story of Krishna with respect to Banasura and in Heracles with respect to Geryon's episode. There are too many similarities. I'm not going to go into depth of it. So basically, what you find, there is a hero figure in various of these Indo-European legends. What happens is the similarities between them are like this. The similarity is that there is a king, an evil king, a bad king who is actually creating a lot of troubles. In the case of Krishna, it is Kamsa, okay, and there is a princess. She may be a sister, she may be a daughter, or a cousin of that evil king. So that is step number 2. A similarity. Third similarity is that there is a prophecy. Either a sage will come and say, or an astrologer will predict, or a voice from the sky will say, "Oh king, you foolish king, this princess will give birth to a son who will kill you." In the case of Krishna, it was Krishna was the son of Devaki, who is the sister of Kamsa. So this is the prophecy. So what the king does, Kamsa does in the fourth similarity, he puts the girl in prison. So Kamsa put the girl in prison. So fifth similarity is that the hero is born supernaturally. We know Krishna is represented to be born with 4 hands in supernatural way. So this is another similarity in Indo-European legends. And the sixth similarity is that the hero is revealed. Okay, generally he is put in water, either in a like how Karna was put. Like they have this small basket, they put him and he goes to another place and they take him and grow him. In the case of Krishna, they did not put him in basket. The father Vasudev, he takes Krishna to Gokula, so that the water legend, the legend that he goes into water and he goes to another area and there he grows up, and he's grown up among cowherds. This again is similar. Krishna grew up among cowherds in Gokula and Vrindavan, and he grows up to be exceedingly strong and kills monsters. This is also common, right? And finally, he comes back to the capital and kills the king. He frees his parents, okay, and then he becomes a king, or he installs someone whom he believes to be a king, who he believes to be a king. He finds a city. Like in the case of Krishna, it was Dwaraka. He wins a princess. In this case, you can say Rukmini or Jambavati. And he defeats other kings. Krishna defeated several kings, Shishupala, Dandavakra, and several other kings. And after a long life, he leaves the world in strange or unexpected circumstances. Now, Krishna was such a warrior. He fought amazing wars. Leaving aside even the divinity part, a warrior of that caliber cannot be affected by an arrow which comes and hits his leg. But this was his divine methodology, saying that I would want to live in this way. So that was a pastime performed. So that kind of similarity, which is that the hero leaves the world in a very strange or unexpected. You not expect the hero of that caliber, such a strong man, to leave the world in such a weird circumstance, but he lives in that way. So these 15 similarities you find all across the Indo-European legends in most cases. So this is also one indirect indicator that this pattern, that how he's born and how he grows up, how he kills his enemy, etc. This pattern itself is similar. This is also an indicator that all of them are coming from a common culture. So basically, when you see the Greeks can be split into 3 branches. The archaic Greece, which is the ancient Greece, which could have assimilated other elements from people which they met on their journey to the shores of Aegean Sea. And the Greeks could also be fused with culture brought by the immigrants like the Minoans, etc. And Greeks could have also been influenced from Near Eastern cultures like the Vedic and Iranian, etc. So this is from the books of Nicholas Kanzanas, Vedic and Indo-European Studies. So basically, what you see today as the Greek culture, I mean the ancient Greek civilization, is not monotonous. It's not like it came from one channel. It has its own ancient channel, which is from the Yavanas, and they had several other cultures influencing on top, and they had their local traditions and understandings, ideas, etc. So basically, this is what. So if you just take one, the Yavana and the ancient Greek culture, you have so much to study and understand. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that when you see the world from the out of India perspective, that how the different tribes, the different groups of people went around, merged with different cultures, and with newer and newer permutations and combinations, there were newer and newer civilization and cultures which were adapted, which were getting established. It's a very interesting area of study. So I would end my session here. Thank you so much for listening patiently. And this again is like an appetizer. And this field per se, it is you could say I give an appetizer, and I invite people who will be interested to support this kind of project, who will be interested to study further, who would be interested to join this kind of research. Feel free to contact me, and these are the different research books which I have referred to speak today. And the conclusion here is that most of the academic research on Indian history is unwilling to consider the evidences of outer India theory, which is scientifically, linguistically, culturally provable. And when you see the world from the OIT perspective, newer and newer doors, newer and newer understandings with respect to movement of people, with respect to anthropology, will get clearer. So I would suggest that at least scholars could consider seeing the world from this perspective, because there is linguistic evidences for OIT, whereas AIT evidences are all made up, and they don't have substantial base in itself, and they can be countered with data. So I end my session here. Thank you so much for listening. So if there are any questions, you can feel free to ask either by chat or you can unmute yourself.